right, so a little bit of an introduction for those who are listening in to this, watching this recording. Michael and I are just getting together and having a bit of a discussion, kind of just openly airing and exploring different topics and questions that we have come to mind. Michael's currently finishing his counselling degree and I've recently finished mine. And so we just want to provide a space where questions can be wondered about aloud, and we can kind of brainstorm. And as Michael said earlier to me, we're searching the space and just sort of seeing what comes up as we discuss. So for today, one of the burning questions that we've got is, what is therapy? And so yeah, we just wanted to kind of spitball together and see what comes up when we think about what is therapy from our own experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Anna. I'm curious to explore this with you. Like I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now. Another friend of mine sort of prompted it, and yeah, now that I'm at the end of my studies, it seems very particularly relevant, the culmination of a long process of study. Like, what have I actually learned? And how am I thinking about, I suppose myself in the role. And so, yeah, like, what is therapy? Like, what is it? Over the couple of weeks that I've been asking myself this, it has already changed a few times. Like, for example, when I first asked myself, I realized that I had a functional answer. Like, I was actually answering it by saying, what is the purpose of therapy? Or like, what are the goals of therapy? Or what does one do? And so, like, I untangled that, and now where I'm at, when I ask myself, what is therapy? Yeah, what I've been feeling into is its presence, it's deep listening, and like deep listening. That for me just feels like a bottomless pit, like a infinite possibilities, and then the third thing is love. Like, I think it seems obvious to me, but it seems that love is, we can't have any kind of relationship without it, which of course includes a therapeutic one. So so maybe that's all I'll say for the moment. There's like that second piece about what is the purpose of therapy. Like, yep. Maybe I could talk to that after that, but I'd be really curious to hear what you think of that and where your mind is at with this question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So just to recap your three aspects, or your three thoughts of what is therapy. So you had love, and what were the other two again?
Presence.
Presence, yeah.
Presence that we bring in, like, through our being, through ourself, and then deep listening. So I suppose a way I would break that down is, listening is like, what am I receiving? What am I paying attention to? Presence is like, how am I being in this moment? Like, what am I open to receiving as well? And also presence as in, what am I giving out as well? And then love is kind of like this, it's almost like nestled between the two. Maybe, like, I still haven't quite figured it out. Like, it's almost like love could, I have been wondering, like, love could be the source of all of that. You know, what motivates presence, what motivates listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of, yeah. Does that
Yeah.
help?
So how would you, I'm curious on the love side of things, how would you conceptualize that or explain that?
Mm. Well, so my learning of love, the most compelling um, piece of education I have about love comes from John Vervaeke. So he talks about the three types of love. So first there's eros, which is like this consumptive love. It's like I want to put this thing inside me. So that could be food, it could be sex, it could be, you know, material possessions, you know, owning, possessing things. So that's eros. Second is philia, which is like a reciprocity that you might share in friendship, helping each other out, kindness, you know, that sort of equality, egalitarian, I see you, I appreciate you, thank you, sort of thing. And then there's agape. And agape is the love that I'm thinking about. This is the sort of love that a parent has for a child. It's sort of edging towards this sort of more mystical, divine love, if you will, from the traditional translation. Because of course, this is like ancient Greek. These are ancient Greek words, I believe. So agape is like, I find this beautiful. It's like, so imagine you got like this baby and it's just this bundle of potential, but it's not socialized. It doesn't really know, like it has a limited sense of self, and it's sort of like this wild being. And the agape is the process of the parents uh, transmitting, like, by loving it. It's sort of like this forgiveness process where it doesn't matter how you behave or what you say. Um, there's this forgiveness that comes through to allow one's own humanity to begin to emerge and flourish. And that's what agape is. It's this idea of um, like a parent giving this to their child, like sort of sacrificing a part of themselves for the well-being and development of their baby, to allow their baby to become human. So the more agape that is passed through, you know, I suppose, you know, think about it in generational terms, over many generations, the more human we become, and that's beautiful. So of course it's not a far leap to see how, you know, a belief system like God or Jesus, like his message of forgiving everyone for their sins, like allows people to become, sort of transcend their limitations. I don't I don't follow that path, but I really respect this principle of, you know, forgiving, to allow people to become even more human, more loving. I think that's beautiful. So you can sort of see how that might be applicable to a therapeutic context.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Helpful, like a useful, you know, process.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think asking the question, what is therapy? I think for me, perhaps for you as well, coming from it from the perspective that we are therapists and have we've got this drive or this calling, you know, and we've got these abilities and skills, not only professionally trained, but something in our personal life has called us to do this work. So for me, I think when I first looked at that question, or when I first received that question, what is therapy? Coming from it from you know, as a therapist, how would I explain therapy to people? But as you're talking about the agape love and thinking about therapy from also going to my own therapy, so me being a client as well, And just the process, even throughout my studies, you know, for me, it was pretty much every subject, everything that I studied at uni, there was something or multiple things in my personal life that directly correlated to the theoretical units or the practical units that I was studying. And so coming to that, what is therapy question, what comes to my mind straight away is therapy in itself is a space, or it's where there is a space and opportunity to address things, like you said, with your deep listening, that observing, the receiving, not just listening with our ears, but listening with all of our senses. And that includes what's going on internally. So, yeah, just kind of sitting on it, hearing what you're reflecting. Because for me, a lot of my therapy, what I would class as therapy in my life, is not necessarily going to a therapist or going to a counselor or a psychologist or a spiritual healer or anything like that, or mentor. I think, you know, we have that title, that label, therapist, therapy. But kind of looking at it deeply and expansively, I would say, what is therapy? Perhaps it's an opportunity. You know, it gives us this opportunity to reflect, to observe, to witness, and then we have choice to change if we want to change things. You know, we have that healing. I mean, I know for me, the 4 words that I kind of operate from in my business and in my life is explore, learn, heal, and grow. So, yeah, perhaps for me, therapy is a lot of that, where we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, explore, learn, heal, and grow. Yeah, I really like that answer. It's it feels like we're really digging into the essential essence or qualities of yeah. You know, like I wonder if, for example, just by analogy, like the practice of learning justice, you know, as a judge, like it being this sort of, you know, like way of being in the world where there's all this precedent and there's all these like frameworks and theories and cases and I would imagine a lot of tools that they use to become and embody justice. You know, that like a judge isn't just a person with a wig sitting behind a tall, like whatever it's called, a pew, whatever it is. Like they're kind of, I think, like embodying the actual justice system, not just as a concept, but like, and not just because they care, but there's something intrinsically good about it.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of, yeah. And yeah, just by analogy, I wonder, like with therapy, like what is therapy? What is a therapist? To be and do therapy, are there analogous processes that sort of allow an internal transformation to occur? I suppose, you know, doing the degree has opened the door to that a bit. Because of course, like the learning process has transformed me. But yeah, when I listen to what you're saying, and I reflect back on what I was saying about presence and listening and love, like that's, I mean, there's so much vitality and potency there. You know, it's sort of, it's almost, I don't know, like, can a therapist, the concept, the functional role of what a therapist is, can it hold that? Like, to me, we're almost talking about, like, what does it mean to be a human in the world? Like a good person, you know, like relating to people in everyday life, not just like you know, listening and having presence and love are not just things that I apply to myself when I'm in the therapy room. It's This is part of the confusion for me, like, and again, why I guess I came to the questions, like, well, um, yeah, like, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
I obviously want to be a competent professional, but I want to become someone who is, well, I don't know. I don't know actually what I want to become. It's very easy to say I want to become a loving person and a good person, but like, what does that really mean? Like, what sort of legacy
Yeah.
do I leave? So, yeah.
One of the words that came to mind twice, is lifestyle. So having, who we are, because there's, as a counselor, as a therapist, there's the code of ethics, to live up by, like unconditional positive regard, non-judgment, all those kind of things. Two of those just come to mind now. And so we have these guidelines that tell us how to be in order to protect other people and to hold others in that highest regard. And if we go back to the love concept, that's that agape, like as a parent, growing the child. Like children literally develop, their brain physically grows and develops based on what they're taught and what they see and what they take in and how they perceive that. And putting that in the context of therapy is, I think, and this probably comes into your other question, which we'll get to at another time, is what are the qualities that make a therapist masterful? And it's having it as a lifestyle. Like being a therapist is our lifestyle. For me, the whole principle of practice what you preach is really ingrained strongly in me, and that's from growing up, different experiences I have. People, it's that classic do as I say, not as I do. Whereas for me, it's like I really want to be practicing what I'm preaching and living that out as a lifestyle. And as I go about as a therapist, it's not just about us being a professional, coming to the client. And this probably goes into a bit of like the function maybe and the structure of therapy. But I see it also as the client, and we get taught this, the client's their own expert. And when I think about it, think about it in terms of my personal life, there's a lot of situations where I find I'm therapizing myself. So I'm going through, it's essentially like there's two of me, and sometimes there's more. There's, different versions. We have different versions and parts of ourselves. And when I'm in this space of being the therapist to myself, being the therapist is essentially that trained person, and coming to the client or the participant who perhaps doesn't have the level of theoretical knowledge or skill training with the tools and techniques. And so they get taught that. But at the same time, this person, the client, has so much of their own expertise from their lived experience that they are also their own therapist, essentially, and they can provide their own therapy to themselves. And so for me, I think part of my role as a therapist is being the facilitator. I mean, two words that have come up to me in the last couple of days are empower and equip people. My motto to myself is I don't want my clients to come back to me. And that's not saying that I don't love them. It's that I know that I've done my job as a therapist and in the therapy space when those clients, sure, they can keep coming back, but or if there's different issues or things that pop up they need help with, but I know that I've done my job well when they're empowered and equipped to go and give themselves what they need in their life.
Yeah.
You know? And so coming back to what is therapy, that kind of like blows things extra into other thoughts. But yeah, it's space, it's opportunity, it's listening. You definitely have presence in therapy. That's one of the functions of therapy as well. And I think I definitely agree with you with the concept of love there. It's noticing how I grow personally, clients' journeys with me. It really is this teaching. If we look at developmental theories or development as a whole, when we grow, the child as an infant is completely dependent on the parent, as we know, and they need the parent to teach them and guide them and direct them. And then it comes a point where the child realizes that they start to become their own person and break away, and that, you know, in those teen years, the rebellion as you become a young adult, and you realize my parents aren't perfect and how I've been raised isn't perfect. And so you start developing your own way of really thinking and taking ownership of your life. And so that parent child dynamic, I think for me, has been reflected in the therapy space for clients. Is it's this learning how to parent ourselves, and that includes the versions and parts of ourselves, and learning how to be in this relationship of love. And you mentioned before that the parent love for a child, that forgiveness, that sacrificial, I'd also add to it the unconditional love. It's this having this unconditional love for who we are, who we have been, and whoever we will be, and giving ourselves space to explore that, to receive that, you know, and that being receive our identities, receive the versions of ourselves, receive our experiences, and then having choice to process it. And the beauty of a therapeutic space is that ideally they're a very safe space. And in that safety, it's kind of like the package of everything that you come with, all the burdens or all of the questions, the confusion, the wounding, everything you come with can kind of be placed safely somewhere to be looked at differently. Yeah. And then there definitely are different functions and structures that we follow to assist with that. Yeah, as a whole, I think it is just having a space, and ideally a safe space, as an opportunity to listen, to look at things, to receive things, and doing all of that in love. And to be able to do it in love and to be able to really witness and observe and listen and receive is then, like you said earlier, having that presence. How am I being in this moment? And just being able to also be in the moment. And that's something beautiful, I think, when you get to that transpersonal side, the spiritual side, is that when we be in the moment, is we don't have to always be taking cognitive action or physical action or emotional action, but by being, things are allowed to settle and heal themselves as well.
Yeah, I wonder about that, this, like, you know, this mode of being because I feel like that's a good lead into the thing I was speaking to before about what I realized I was getting conflated about was, what is therapy and what is the purpose of therapy? Because yeah, it's like, well, all right, this is a stapler. Okay, now that I know it's a stapler, I have a sense of what its functionality can be. So my best guess right now is, like what, well, yeah, and obviously this is oriented toward my own, journey with learning and life experience. But, what I'm really interested in wondering about with the potential of exploring therapy is that it's about expanding consciousness and allowing the development of compassion through life. So if that's like the function. Now, there's a bit there because it's like, well, what is consciousness and what does expand mean? To me, consciousness is the ability to experience our experience. So I think of it as a skill. We're having it just by virtue of existing, like being born is enough to be conscious. And so the qualifier for expansion is like really low, but what I'm thinking about here is the quality of expansion. So that means learning so the skill part of like realizing what we're paying attention to, and that's in that kind of relationship, deriving meaning from it. So like, yeah, the objects can be like, that's a stapler. Yeah. Like you see a stapler, I see a stapler, but what I'm attending to in my subjective experience, through my conscious awareness, it's going to be a unique meaning. So yeah, the ability to experience one's experience. Now, I've heard it said from a few practitioners that trauma, for example, is an unexperienceable experience. Do I fully understand what happens to someone when they are traumatized? No, I don't. I've heard of, people's psyche fragmenting off, maybe to protect themselves from the pain, all kinds of different theories and ideas. I don't know, but what I am interested in exploring is the idea. Well, yeah, it's an idea, but it needs to become a practice, like a lived experience of I suppose expanding my conscious awareness, which means, like a wisdom tradition that I've been inspired by, for example, is like Tibetan Buddhism, where they talk about, with the development of compassion, you start with yourself. And then, once that sort of stabilizes, if you will, once you get a good hold of, wow, there's suffering, there's pain, and I'm having that kind of experience. Like, you can expand that out beyond, well, they say, expand it out beyond yourself to, say, like a group of people, or, a whole population in a country, or the whole world. And then to, like all humans, all sentient beings. Like there's these layers of awareness that they talk about. So I think that sort of framework is an interesting one to explore as well. And that's what I mean by the development of consciousness. For me, Tibetan Buddhism has just been the particular path that I've been interested in, but there's plenty of, I think, examples of this through various wisdom traditions, but also, like just hearing other people's stories, that, people that have a more of a secular worldview or a postmodern worldview as well. Like it's not, I don't think it has to be a mystical thing. Like compassion to me means just having kindness for realizing, my God, like, yeah, I'm having an angry thought, for example, and that's painful. Like that actually hurts me. And when I started to realize, like, oh, like I can actually recognize my own pain here and still have the experience. Like I'm not trying to push the anger away or the pain away. I'm just acknowledging that the experience is challenging. And so yeah, I hope that I'm illustrating that what I'm talking to is like the relationship between my sense of self and the experience that is contained within me, that anger. The meaning that creates is now different because the way I'm perceiving it is different.
Yeah, yeah. As you're talking, it's really coming back for me, coming back to that love concept. And in that wisdom tradition, to have compassion for others is to first have it for yourself. And there's that age-old saying, love thy neighbor as thyself. And so if we come back to that concept of love and therapy, and I guess that reciprocal relationship that happens, right? And in therapy, it generally, I mean, you can have group sessions and couple sessions, but therapy is a lot about the individual coming with something they're struggling with. And it's learning to have that interoception, to be able to look inwards and reflect on what's going on and understand the self better, and then be able to move forward. And how that love and compassion comes in is then reverberated out, and there's that vibrates out then into the world. And so when we, I suppose, can come to love ourselves in that unconditional, compassionate, agape love, in that is that will naturally start to vibrate out to others. And then of course that comes back to us, classic Newton's laws of motion. Every action has that opposite and equal reaction. And so yeah, I think looking at it from the direction of love, and then what is therapy, it's I suppose that space to expand conscious awareness and just having that opportunity to be able to look at things, feel things, see things differently. And I think it's a space for the individual to do that. They have that quality time, right? You set aside a time, you book an appointment, you have time. I mean, it becomes a practice, perhaps a ritual in your life, that you make this time for that inner reflection. And then depending on what you do with that. So, and the different functions in therapy. Yeah. Lots of big thoughts. It's good.
Yeah. No, it's been good to talk it out a bit and, speak this aloud, because I haven't really had many opportunities to, and I think that's it. Like, I think we sort of said it before, like so often it's like people feel this compulsion or a sense of urgency to need to know, like to arrive at a concrete answer. And like what I've appreciated and what I appreciate about these sorts of conversations is valuing the process, valuing the journey of just like sharing perspectives and like genuinely just trying to understand where someone else is coming from, and maybe that creates something new, like in our own understanding of the world. And yeah, for me, like it's such an open question and something to explore for a long time, and hopefully for as long as I practice this discipline of therapy, whatever that is. I'm still not convinced I know.
Yeah.
But I do feel that if I ever sort of consolidated myself and resigned myself or rigidified myself into an idea that I know what therapy is, like, yeah, it doesn't strike me as a wise approach to do the job.
Mm. Well, I think, and having that flexibility, that fluidity in keeping it open is, it gives opportunity for not so much redefining, but re-exploring or navigating it differently, looking at it differently. And that allows for growth, because then you're constantly seeking to learn and to transform in ways. And it's, like no one therapeutic technique is going to be the same for every client. We're also individuals. So I think it's really good, just, yeah, as we're talking, and we'll finish up in a couple of minutes. And just as we're talking, like even feeling my own mind wanting to get that black and white answer to then be like, solve, move on. But
all right, yeah.
yeah, like we're done, next question, go. And it's just having that opportunity to have the open-ended discussion, the open-ended question. It's sort of the ongoing, I suppose there's a creativity in exploring what it is, and it allows that creativeness, which bubbles up from our heart space, and our, I guess, that spiritual space, if you like, as well, and to be a bit more creative, be a bit different, rather than having to lock in these answers that our brain likes to have those concrete guidance. But yeah, just opening it up for a bit more creative expression, exploration, and learning, I suppose.
Well, I think we should continue the conversation, do this another time, maybe give ourselves some time to digest what we've shared. And
Yeah.
I'd love to check in with this another time.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And just to anyone who's watching this, if you guys have any input, your own experience with therapy, your own thoughts on this, any questions that you'd like heard discussed or to be discussed, is just to comment about it, and we'll just continue this discussion and keep learning and growing together. Yeah. Thank you for your time, Michael. I look forward to chatting again.
Yeah, thank you. See you then.